Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gifted Hands. Please welcome former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Ben Carson.
Well, so good to be back at CPAC again, be in steaming hot Texas. I was under a great time restraint because my flight was leaving at 5:40, but of course it's delayed. All flights these days are delayed. You know, and it's not a weather problem, it's not a mechanical problem. It's because we've lost so many of our pilots and other staff because they won't take a vaccine that doesn't work and is associated. And we're still just doing stupid things. And it really is kind of irritating, quite frankly. And we will finally know that our government has gotten the message when they begin to fully acknowledge natural immunity, which is by far better than any other kind of immunity that you can have. But of course, if they acknowledge natural immunity, then they can't insist that everybody get the jab. So, you know, you see how politics and ideology is infiltrating everything that we do, and it really is very sad because, you know, America is an amazing place. Do you realize that we're the only country that has a dream? No other country has a dream. Have you heard of a Nigerian dream or a French dream or even a Canadian dream? You know, the Canadians used to think they had one. But, you know, the fact of the matter is we are the place that people long to come to. And our country was a grand experiment. Nobody in Europe or other parts of the world thought it would work. I mean, they thought it was farcical. A country run on the will of the people without having a monarch or a governing body, how could it work? And yet, it has worked for almost 250 years and created the greatest nation the world has ever known. However, that experiment is in jeopardy right now more so than it has ever been. We have people who have a different dream than the traditional American dream of life and liberty, pursuit of happiness, being able to do things the way you wanted to do them without somebody mandating what you could and could not do. And, you know, when Benjamin Franklin came out of the Constitution Hall in 1787, after they finished the toil and labor, a lady said, "So what do we have, sir? A republic or a monarchy?" And he said, "A republic, if we can keep it. If we can keep it." And that's going to be really where we are right now. We are on the verge of losing it, and we cannot relax one bit. You know, we see our children being indoctrinated and starting at a very early age. And, you know, we're telling them that the most important determinant of what happens to them in life is the color of their skin. Think about that. Now, animals have very big midbrains in their brain because they need to be able to react to things very quickly. People's midbrains are not as well developed. But in substitute for that, we have these very well-developed frontal lobes where you engage in rational thought processing. And we can calculate and we can project and we can evaluate people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, like an animal. And then we have people who are trying to confuse our children about their gender. You know, there was a time when we all knew that if you had two X chromosomes, you were a female, and if you had an X and a Y, you were a male. But now, no, well, if you wake up in the morning and you feel like something else, that's what you really are. Even if you feel like you're a tree, you're a tree. Give me a break. You know, these people are nuts. They actually have lost their minds. You know? But, you know, what is really happening here? What they are trying to inculcate into people is don't believe your eyes, don't believe your ears, don't believe your heart. Just listen to us. We'll tell you what you're supposed to think. And they're trying to condition our people to think that way. And we don't need to think that way because this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian values and principles that show us how we're supposed to think. And when you think about the way our young people are being raised now, taught that they need safe spaces, that you don't need to respect the opinions that differ from yours, that you can cancel people, that your opinion is more important than other people's opinion. And then we're surprised when a young person takes a high-powered weapon and mass murders a bunch of people. And then we say, well, it's the gun. It is not the gun, it is the heart that needs to be changed. We need to be aiming at the right thing in our nation again. And we need to teach morals and values once again. And I think we made a big mistake in the 60s when we said God cannot be in our schools. You know, think about this. It's in our founding document. The Declaration of Independence talks about certain unalienable rights given to us by our Creator, AKA God. Okay, it's in our pledge. It says we are one nation under God. Many courtrooms on the wall, it says, in God we trust. Every coin in our pocket, every bill in our wallet says, in God we trust. And yet, you say you can't talk about that in your schools. You're not supposed to talk about that in public. I mean, in medicine, we call that schizophrenia. And that seems to be what's going on in our country right now. And then you look at what's going on at our southern border. It's not just that millions of undocumented people are coming in, bringing all kinds of things with them. We don't know what diseases they have, bringing human trafficking into our country. And that's not the biggest problem, though. The biggest problem is that there are nations in this world that hate America, that want to destroy us, places like Iran that see us as the great Satan. Why wouldn't they be sending their operatives through our southern border, targeting our electric grid and sending us back a century, putting us in a very vulnerable spot so that we now become easy pickings for China or any place else? You know, we have got to pray to God that He will protect us until we get some real leadership back in this country once again. And then what about our citizens who are not able to protect themselves? What do we do about that? You know, what about the little babies who have not been born yet, but who are fully human? Let me read you something from the Bible. It says, if thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou sayest, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth not he know it? And shall he not render to every man according to his works? God expects us to do something when innocent people are being drawn to death. And I think that verse speaks for itself. And then what about all the crime and the violence that is going on? All these things that I'm talking about are picking away at the foundation of our nation. And there are those who say that we are a systemically racist nation, that some people have no chance. You think back to the George Floyd tragedy, and that was a tragedy, that was a horrible thing. But that police officer, Derek Chauvin, was way off on the far end of the bell curve. That's not the way typical police act. And yet it was played 24/7, trying to make you think that this is typical, that this happens all the time. We talked to some friends of ours in Australia, other side of the world. They said, yeah, they're playing that all the time over here, talking about America. Absolutely untrue. And how often, actually, are unarmed black men killed by police officers? Well, that bastion of conservative thought, the Washington Post, says that it is less than 24 a year. Now, that's still too many, but there are more than 50 million police-civilian encounters a year. It is nowhere near a common occurrence. And there was another incident that occurred just like the George Floyd incident. Same kind of situation, police with the knee on the neck, man on the ground saying, I'm gonna die. It got almost, and he did die, almost no attention. Why? Because he was white. It didn't fit the narrative. What a bunch of crap. You think about it. And my wife and I write extensively about that in our new book, Created Equal. But then let's think about something like energy. We were energy independent. Think about that. We were net exporter of energy, cleanest air, cleanest water, and we gave all of that away. We gave the keys to Putin. And first of all, it led to massive inflation. And then because Putin now has the energy keys, the war in Ukraine, and now the Chinese are thinking about Taiwan, and more things will continue to happen because of stupid policies and decisions. And you know what we can't do is we can't change the impact of stupid policies just by renaming them. And we can't get rid of recession that has occurred just by renaming it. And the only people who believe that are people who don't think for themselves. And I think it's rather offensive to the American people for anybody to think that they're stupid enough to believe that. American people are smart, but we have to continue to work with them. We have to make sure that we feed them the right information. That's the reason that we developed the American Cornerstone Institute, which I founded along with many terrific people from HUD, to concentrate on those principles that made us into a great nation. That would be our faith, which teaches us how to relate to each other. That would be liberty, freedom. That would be community, the ability to work together. And that would be life, our love of life and our respect for life from the womb to the tomb. And we also have a pediatric component to the program called Little Patriots. And please look it up, littlepatriotslearning.com. We have beautiful illustrated lessons for the children to teach them the real history of our country, the real principles in our country. And it's free of charge because we have wonderful underwriters, and also the books, Why America Matters, and a new book that just came out, Red, White, and Blue, Our Flag Matters to Me and You, to teach our children who we are as a nation. And we don't skip the bad parts of who we are, but I gotta tell you, there's a lot more good parts than there are bad parts about this nation. And every nation has bad parts. There are those who want to make you think that America is horrible because we had slavery. But if you know any history, every society has had to deal with slavery. There are more slaves in the world today than there have ever been at any point in time, particularly with human trafficking. So there are plenty of issues there, but if there's something unique about us, is that we had so many people who were vehemently opposed to slavery that we fought a civil war and lost a large portion of our population to get rid of the evil institution That's what we need to teach our children about slavery in this nation. And let me just wrap up by saying, you know, conservatives, people who are logical, people who love our nation, we need to get rid of our pet peeves. Because there are so many people who say, I don't like that person. His policies may be okay, but I don't like him. I can't vote for him. I'm just going to sit it out. That is the same as voting for the socialists. And I guarantee you, when the socialists get in power, you're going to regret that. Your pet peeves won't mean a thing to them. And we have got to learn that lesson. We have also got to learn to stop talking about election integrity and do something about it. You know, you think about Virginia last November. They had volunteers to cover 96% of the precincts to make sure there was no hanky-panky. That's what we've got to do on a nationwide level. And we've got to start thinking about election reform, something that works for everybody, something that is transparent, that everybody can trust, because no one trusted what happened in 2020. But in 2016, there were all people saying, he's not my president, I don't believe it worked. You know, it doesn't work for any of us. We need to spend some significant intellectual energy in terms of figuring out how we're going to do that. And just remember, Alexis de Tocqueville came here in 1831 because the Europeans were fascinated with why a country barely 50 years old was already able to compete with them on virtually every level. And he studied our government. He was duly impressed by the fact that we had separation of powers and checks and balances. He looked at our business model and was duly impressed by the way we encourage innovation and entrepreneurship. And he looked at our schools and he was blown away. You could find a mountain man and they could read and he could tell you about the Declaration of Independence. But then he looked at our churches, and that's what blew him away. The sermons that came out of those pulpits that gave a ragtag bunch of militiamen the courage and the fortitude to defeat the most powerful military force on the planet. And they gave the people a sense of morality and right and wrong. And he concluded his 2-volume analysis called Democracy in America by saying, America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. Let us make America good and great again. Thank you.